If you ever spent time doing shadow puppetry with your hands and fingers or various objects, making patterns and shapes and little plays under the light up against a wall, then I've got a game for you that will feel deeply nostalgic. It's called Projected Dreams. It came out at the end of last month, and it is a puzzle game that sees you organising objects into different shapes and sizes and surprises to create patterns on the wall to match the outline of something that you've seen in a faded photograph. The idea is that you're leafing through your photograph album, covering lots of different time periods of your life. And so the photos will be slightly blurred initially, but you'll be able to see the outline of something that was meaningful in that photo. And that then becomes projected onto the wall. You then look at the room that you're in from a fixed perspective, but can kind of rotate your head around, sort of like a standing VR title in a way, but it's not VR at all. And there'll be lots of different objects that you can pick from. And when you pick them up, you can rotate them around and angle them in certain directions to then place them down and fit them inside the silhouette that is on the wall. The closer you get to matching the silhouette with the right objects, you'll then get 1, 2 or 3 stars. And if you can get all 3 stars for all the photos, great, you'll get plenty of achievements and get to move on. But as long as you get something quite close with a single star, you will be able to progress in the game. And one of the things that Projected Dreams does very well is to open up and give you lots of hints, if you want them, around how to solve different puzzles. The game starts off with you in your childhood room, and that main concept of picking up objects, twisting and turning them around and putting them next to each other or stacking them on top of each other to create silhouettes is how the game starts. The room that you're in has got lots of interactive objects, so you might be able to change the colour of the stars or set off the train in front of you, or interact with some of the drawers and find some new objects in there. And if you do get stuck, you can go back to your photo album and flip open over the photo, and it will tell you the objects that are involved in the puzzle for you then to work out how to arrange them afterwards. So it gives you some real fair hints that still gives you some semblance of accomplishment for getting the puzzle right, which I think is the right way to go. However, Projected Dreams then starts to expand on that afterwards. And so in one specific area, you'll be able to stick objects together like glue, which means that they'll be able to hover off the floor, for example. Another area allows you to make objects grow or shrink to then suit certain areas. Another one will be able to make an object become invisible, and that allows you to have objects in theory levitating in the middle of the spotlight. Another one has 2 spotlights, so you'll be able to put 2 stacked objects together in different spotlights and then have them merge in the central spotlight to create its own unique pattern. What I really like about Projected Dreams is that it doesn't stay still. And so every area has a totally different mechanic that is explored exclusively in that area. And then once it's done 6 to 8 puzzles in that area, it kind of goes, I'm good now. And then it will move on to something else and give you a totally new mechanic to learn and muck about and play with in a new area, with a new aesthetic and a new world to kind of look around and interact with. And also a beautiful soundtrack to get involved with too. There's hidden collectible cassettes to pick up, which add on little jaunty tunes, but it's got that soft, beautiful, lush, dreamlike quality with the music that really gets you set into the mood. And because each of the rooms that you are engaged in are like dreams themselves, like one's in space, one's in a spooky ghost train, another one is underwater, and like instead of opening drawers in your bedroom, you're busy opening up seashells to see objects inside instead of pearls. It's so beautifully done that it sells the world that you're in as lush and inviting and nostalgic and somewhat sentimental as well. And whilst the story is somewhat surface level because you can only glean what you can from the photos. It doesn't go into like big story elements. And so you can kind of take and leave the story however much you want. It's all fantastic window dressing for some really quite nifty puzzles that never get too complicated that they become convoluted, but you can try out your own creativity to try and get at least some points on the board so that you can progress through the game, even though each puzzle does have one true 3-star answer. If I were to critique anything about Projected Dreams, it's that it offers you an awful lot of objects, but actually quite a lot of puzzles revolve around the same 3 or 4 over again because they're very blocky. And so they're easy to slot into lots of different puzzles and then have a couple of others kind of hang off it. And what that does is it makes the difficulty level really pitched at that mid to easier end of a puzzle game. But because of the general vibe and feeling and nostalgic attitude that Projected Dreams imbues in every pore that it has, from its 90s traditional toys that you're using to make objects and shapes out of, to the sympathetic soundtrack, to the lush visuals, and the general photographic theme of trying to tell someone's life through shadow puppetry, it all hangs together as more than the sum of its parts and sells a really beautifully well-rounded product that I had an absolute blast playing and would recommend it to anyone that's feeling particularly nostalgic. A really random end point for me is this game reminds me, I didn't have shadow puppetry as something that I did as a kid, but when I used to share a bedroom with my brother when we was all living at home, we had wallpaper that I at night used to make out funny faces or weird horrible faces depending on what mood I was in, and you could make up like pictures in the ink blots that were splattered all over the page. It was probably a therapist's absolute dream, but for me that was how I used to kind of send myself to sleep at night, and Projected Dreams reminds me so much of that it gives me a probably very specific and unique warm fuzzy feeling inside. And so, yeah, more of that in gaming, please. Absolutely love it. Projected Dreams is out now.